All right, we're going to have a bit of fun with this one because earlier today, Donald Trump received public backlash from two prominent but very different Republicans, Mitt Romney, who criticized Trump's character, and Mitch McConnell, of all people, who acknowledged that Trump killed the bipartisan border bill. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bell before you go. I'd greatly appreciate it. All right, friends, we have a couple of clips to look at in this video. And it's fascinating to see the internal politics within the Republican Party play themselves out, especially with the three people in question. Donald Trump, obviously, the current cult leader of the GOP, the undisputed leader of that party. Mitch McConnell, who has been a prominent figure in Republican politics and at times the leader of the GOP, obviously within the Senate. And you could easily make the case that he is, to whatever extent that the Republicans have been politically successful, it's because of McConnell, so prominent figure, guy who's leaving leadership within the next year or two. And then Mitt Romney, who used to lead the Republican Party in 2012. He ran against President Barack Obama as its presidential nominee. He has served one term in the United States Senate since 2019, and he's announced that that's enough for him. He's done, especially with the MAGA movement being the way it is, and so he's going to retire and not seek re-election. All of this is prominent because they're three very different types of Republicans. We're going to start with Romney because his remarks were the most pointed, but the least surprising because he has been an increasingly outspoken critic of Donald Trump for years now, that this is in the context of Donald Trump's Manhattan trial, which a lot of people, I think, wrongly, reductively call it a hush money case, when in fact it's an electoral interference case. This is what Mitt Romney had to say about Donald Trump's situation.
I think everybody has made their own assessment of President Trump's character, and so far as I know, you don't pay someone $130,000 not to have sex with you.
Wow, that was Republican Senator Mitt Romney.
And of course, it delights the CNN host, as it does me. Anytime a Republican takes a shot at Donald Trump, metaphorically speaking, it's fun to talk about. It's fun to delight in. And again, this is kind of par for the course. Mitt Romney has been, again, an outspoken critic of Donald Trump, really, I think, since the Ukrainian impeachment, and certainly the January 6th impeachment, and he's been increasingly vocal ever since. He also says that that's part of the reason why he's leaving the United States Senate, why he doesn't seek re-election. I mean, Romney is also the guy who said that, he interacted with other Republicans who said they either wanted to impeach Donald Trump in the House or they wanted to convict Donald Trump in the Senate, but they feared for their safety or the safety of their loved ones from the MAGA cult as a response. So Mitt Romney, who's an independently, wealthy, he doesn't rely on his Senate paycheck. He's a very rich man. He had to hire additional security to protect himself and his family from Donald Trump's cult. So his words here, talking about Donald Trump's character, not exactly surprising. They're funny to think about. Mitt Romney is a deeply religious man, and the Republican Party professes itself to be the party of Christ, and yet they've thrown their lot in behind Donald Trump, a man who is about as far from Jesus Christ and the teachings of Jesus Christ as one can possibly find. Again, great stuff, though. Hard to think that once upon a time, Mitt Romney was the Republican leader. Just the juxtaposition there, the former Republican leader talking this way about the current Republican leader and speaking honestly. It's very strange stuff. Mitch McConnell is the real surprising one here. In this clip I'm about to show you, Mitch McConnell publicly acknowledged that it was Donald Trump who was responsible for thwarting the congressional attempts to legislate the issue at the southern border. Great stuff.
We all felt the border was a complete disaster, myself included. And Chad, you remember covering the phases we went through. First, there was an effort to make law, which requires you to deal with Democrats. And then a number of our members thought it wasn't good enough. And then our nominee for president didn't seem to want us to do anything at all. That took months to work our way through it. So we ended up doing the supplemental that was originally proposed, which dealt with not all problems. It didn't solve the border problem, but certainly addressed the growing threats at the moment.
So again, Mitch McConnell's clever here, right? So this is a guy who has spent his entire life being a devout servant of the Republican Party. And I want to be clear here, he's not completely different. At the end of the day, much like Bill Barr and a lot of other Republicans like Chris Sununu, Mitch McConnell puts short-term partisan advantage over long-term partisan health and even more disturbingly, the long-term health of the nation. Okay, so, but for him to publicly acknowledge, rarely, that Donald Trump was responsible for killing a congressional attempt to manage the crisis at the southern border, that was a rare shot across the bow at Donald Trump. And he didn't, he didn't make too much of a fuss about it. He didn't throw in unnecessary adjectives the way that Trump would if he were talking about McConnell. But he made it very clear. It wasn't President Biden's fault. It wasn't the Democrats' fault. They made a deal. They made a deal in good faith. And again, from a progressive standpoint, there was a lot to complain about with respect to that deal because there were at least as many conservative concessions as progressive. And that wasn't the problem. We were willing to take it on the chin for a short-term solution. And it was Republicans who killed it for pure, cynical political reasons. As a matter of fact, McConnell was quoted at the time that this deal fell through that, quote, the politics on this have changed, end quote. Otherwise, he was a champion of the very bill that he helped kill on behalf of Donald Trump. And that's the other thing, too. I want to be very clear. McConnell helped kill that bill on behalf of Trump because he recognized that Trump, who carries much more leadership within the GOP and clout than even he does, was going to oppose it. So McConnell reluctantly fell in line and helped facilitate Trump's short-term cynical political advantage. But he's also honest enough to acknowledge that it wasn't, what he wanted to do. It was what Trump compelled to do for cynical politics. Fascinating stuff. But I also want to remind you, at the end of the day, Mitch McConnell is not going to come out and condemn Donald Trump the way that even Mitt Romney has. And if you have any doubts about that, I need only refer you to this.
What is your legacy if the next president is Trump, who has encouraged Russia to invade our NATO allies if they don't contribute enough to defense spending?
We can speculate all day about what might happen or what might not happen. I'm going to consistently avoid discussing the presidential election. I got one job as I give up my leader position, that's to create a Republican majority in the Senate, and I'm going to confine my political observations to taking the Senate back.
That's all you need to know. So again, I play this clip to show you that even Mitch McConnell, as much of a creature of partisan politics as he is, even there are little cracks in the armor there where you can tell he despises Donald Trump. And reportedly he does. He thinks Trump's an idiot, uncurious, politically costly. He's clearly not somebody who respects Trump as a person or even as a figure. He just acknowledges reality that Trump won at the end of the day. Trump won over the McConnells and Romneys of the party and has mutated the GOP into an authoritarian cult. So Mitch McConnell, in his cynical politics, is going to try to get as much from that as he possibly can as he pieces out, and basically assumes the role that Speaker Nancy Pelosi did when she gave up her leadership role. She's no longer not only not Speaker of the House, she's no longer a member of the leadership of the Democratic Party in the House. And Mitch McConnell's going to do the same thing in the Senate. He says he's going to try to create a Republican majority, and then he's done. He acknowledges that the politics have changed and he wants no part of it. So fascinating stuff to me because, again, McConnell and Kevin McCarthy, the former Republican Speaker, they had an opportunity, particularly in the aftermath of January 6th, particularly to do this the right way. The House brought articles of impeachment against Donald Trump. All you needed was a bare majority. They got the votes to do it. And the Republican Senate under McConnell, because they still had the majority at the time, they didn't want to have a trial while Donald Trump was still president. So they kicked the can down the road, waited until after Donald Trump left office to have the trial in the Senate. He was an ex-president. And then even though McConnell said that Donald Trump was absolutely responsible for the January 6th insurrection, he wouldn't vote to convict Trump because Trump at the time was now an ex-president. So just fascinating stuff. Well, you could have convicted him when he was still the president, removed him from office, and successfully impeached him, removed him from office. Mike Pence would have taken over for the however many days remainder of Trump's term. But instead, you deliberately kicked it back so as to create a pretext to vote not to convict Trump, because even though you personally find him abhorrent, even though you personally believe that he was responsible for the impeachable offense in question, you weren't willing to go against your party in that way, even though I think you could easily make the argument for the long-term health of the GOP, it would have been better. But that's the thing about Mitch McConnell. It's the thing about Kevin McCarthy. It's not that they're stupid. Well, I mean, McConnell's not stupid. It's just that people say McConnell's a great strategist. I would argue McConnell's a great tactician. Again, short-term 1 to 2 political moves ahead, he's very good. But the long-term health of the United States Senate and American politics have been truly corroded because of Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell helped create the circumstances which is destroying his own party. He is like Dr. Frankenstein and Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. He has created a monster, thought to use the monster, and now the monster is politically speaking, killing him. Fascinating stuff. Let me know what you think in the comments.